So we were all there at one point, being new to silver stacking. And when it really comes down to it, for a lot of us, it probably started very much the same way. Seeing a video from Silver Slayer about his panda collection, or the 1,000 other things that he made videos about. Whatever it was, we were all new to stacking at some point. And with that came the normal trials and tribulations of being a new stacker. There are so many different things that you're only going to learn with time about stacking. Everything from how to go to the LCS, questions to ask, what kind of things you should be looking at, what kind of things you can consider when you're making purchases, everything and anything. And not only that, the other big thing with stacking is that journey never ends. It's always something. You're always learning about something, whether it's a new series coming out, whether it's you, like every other detective out there, trying to figure out what really makes gold and silver tick, what changes price, all of it. It's all inclusive. And they're all, again, riddled with the mistakes that new stackers make. Now, in this current time frame, there's probably a lot of new stackers out there. With all the FOMO that came out the last couple of months about, every scenario under the sun, potentially happening, and the dollar collapse, and, anything that you could possibly think of. There are probably so many people starting out on that same journey that many of us have had. The big thing is, if you could give advice to other stackers that are in your position that you were either months ago, years ago, decades ago, what would it be? That's an interesting question in itself. I mean, how has the environment changed over time versus, what it is now? Obviously things are, online mostly now, whether you're buying on peer-to-peer or eBay or, from the bullion dealers. There was no YouTube 40 years ago for you to go ahead and look at, all kinds of videos from Silver Seeker, Silver Dragons, Yankee Stacking, Salivate Metal. There were none of those. So you didn't have that wealth of knowledge. It came from either, someone taking you to the LCS, or, I don't know, maybe you saw a late night infomercial trying to sell you gold. Whatever it was, there's always going to be something. Now myself, when I look back at my initial days of stacking, what I remember is, yes, YouTube was the gateway. There was something there, something that I saw, something that I came across that definitely piqued my interest. But not only that, it was more that, hey, this is another diversification that you can get into to, just see how it's going to go. And it's something that you can also add the collecting aspect to as well. But looking back at it, I mean, would I have started the same way? Interestingly, probably. And what I mean by that, so myself, I started out pretty much with generics. Now, I would say the main mistake that I started out with generics was I went to APMEX. So right off the bat, I was overpaying from day one. But I will say that by looking at APMEX and seeing, all the different things that were out there, it was enough to get me interested, get me started. My first purchase of silver was actually 1 ounce APMEX bars, so just the generic 1 ounce APMEX bars. And I'm pretty sure even at the time, I probably overpaid for them a little bit. But when I got them, they were, I think it was like 10 that I ordered, and then I ordered a few, and again, another mistake. I ordered a few Australian Victory in the Pacific half ounce silver pieces, like coins, and those are pretty cool. I mean, it's a mistake in that I should have known better than to purchase fractional silver, but also again, I was looking at APMEX, so there was a lot there. There was a lot to unpack. In this environment, though, looking forward for current stackers, I heard during all the hype and FOMO, I heard a lot of people talking about, gold. I gotta buy some gold. I gotta get on gold. So not so much silver, mainly gold. And, talking to those people, I try to let them know, look, it's a mixed bag. You really have to understand what it is to, purchase physical. All the great things that come along with that, but all the negatives. I mean, it was interesting. Yesterday, I was actually listening to a video by the Uneducated Economist. Now, if you don't know who he is, he's just a random dude. He works at lumber mill. Works at a lumber mill, so he's always talking about lumber prices and just anything to do with that kind of stuff. Like, he knows it like the back of his hand. The dude deals with it on a daily basis. But he's actually very smart. As someone who's not actually formally educated in the topics, he actually speaks with authority to them, and he's actually pretty right a lot of the time. I'm assuming he spends a lot of his time reading books and just kind of educating himself, which apparently he does. Anyway, what he was talking about was something that is a common topic in the stacking community, which is the de-dollarization. You're going to hear it over and over. I hear the same usual suspects always touting, the BRICS nations are going to get away from the dollar. No one wants to be in the dollar. And he was talking about that, some interesting facts about the dollar and just, how the dollar operates abroad. It's so funny because we think about the dollar like, oh, it's this thing that can just be arbitrarily taken away. But there's a lot that goes into that. It's not just about, being in dollars. The interesting point that he made that I was like, what, that's actually true. And I hadn't really thought of that, but it was an excellent point. That outside the United States, when, debt contracts are written, they're settled in dollars. So, like, if it's Saudi Arabia, if it's China, if it's whatever, they always settle their debt contracts in the US dollar. Why? Because for better or for worse, it's the most stable thing out there. And no one wants your dirty rubles. No one wants your dirty whatever it is that you have. They want the dollar, for better or for worse. And that's a very interesting point, because that creates constant demand for the dollar. It's crazy. It actually is really crazy. Like, when you think about it, like when you think about how much business takes place outside the United States that has nothing to do with, sovereign finance, just companies outside the United States wanting the dollar as their medium of exchange. People don't think about things like that. But one of the interesting things he was talking about yesterday was that, because there's so much demand for the dollar abroad, that actually, because, and again, this goes down the rabbit hole of like borderline conspiracy thinking, but borderline conspiracy theory, but definitely thinking outside the box. What he was saying was that, what if, the de-dollarization talk is actually on purpose, and the perpetrator of it is actually like the U.S. government, or, the cabal that runs the U.S. government, because they want to lower the demand for the dollar for various reasons. That's the interesting thing. Like, you would think, if you were in power or whatever, that, you were trying to create the one world government, you would want just endless demand for your debt, right? Yes and no, because one of the things that he was talking about, which again, it's not hard to understand, but it's just one of those things you would never think about. It costs a lot of money to be the world reserve currency. It's not a free thing. There's a lot that goes into that. That's, additional costs of things, just for that type of sovereign finance. Same thing, like when you're holding, we always talk about, we were just talking the other day about central banks buying, gold bullion. There's a cost to that. It's not free. Not only do you have to purchase that bullion, ship it, and store it somewhere securely, all of that stuff costs money. Crazy things to think about. But the reason I mention it is because, again, when you're new to stacking, you don't know what's what. You're just hearing, whatever current, events are coming to the forefront. You're diving head first into whatever's going on right now, which obviously we've just gone through a bunch of different things here domestically, and we're still going through things abroad. But when you're new to stacking, you don't know what's truth and what's, fiction. You don't know what's hype or FOMO. You're hearing what you're hearing, and depending on the voice that you're hearing it from, again, you may jump in hook, line, and sinker, and you see plenty of people do it. But what happens is they get burned. They get burned right out the gates because, as we saw, silver spot prices cratered. I mean, it's still up there from where it was, but it's nowhere near the peak of what it was. That's a big deal. If you went big, like we saw so many people do during the silver squeeze, you're underwater, not only just on spot, but the premiums during times like that. That's another thing that people don't understand about, the stocking environment. They think it's just par for the course. Like, I have to pay a premium. Yes, you do, but you also don't have to pay top of the mark. You can, you can time it, you can take your time, you can dollar cost average. There's so many different things that you could be doing. These are the mistakes of new stockers, and they're all around, especially right now. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a high amount of them wash out, because stacking is one of those things where you learn the lessons the hard way. There's just no way around it. You can hear it time and time again, but darn well you're putting your money down, and then all of a sudden, the bottom falls out. That's kind of the nature of it. And really, the most persistent people are probably stackers.